welcome. You're watching ET Now. I'm Anisha Jain. Well, one of the best and the biggest markets in India has been hospitality of late, at least in terms of the stock returns as well. And of course, it's been gaining ground, and a lot of global MNCs are now looking at tapping into this India opportunity as well. To decode that for us, in a sense, how the longevity of the cycle is likely to be, how sustainable this growth is going to be, I have Alan Watts, the President APAC, as well as Zubin Saxena, Country Head India from Hilton, joining us on the show. Hi, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today on ET Now.
Very nice to be here.
Okay, let's start with you, Alan. In this recent trip of yours to India, how does it feel different than, let's say, a couple of years ago?
Look, I think India has enormous momentum. I think what's different in the India cycle this time is it's a cycle on the other end of an infrastructure build. In India, over the last 2 decades, has had boom and bust cycles in the industry. We saw it pre-2008. We saw it then again in 2012. The difference this time is the rising consumer demand of the middle class. I mean, the Indian economy is, of course, booming. India is now the 5th largest GDP in the world. And so that India consumer, that India domestic travel is being twinned with the infrastructure build in India, which makes for a longer cycle. So it's fair to say that India not only has momentum that feels familiar because we've been here before, but it feels safer than it ever has before.
Oh, so it's safer as well. So you do see that, confidence in the Indian economy that it's going to be a bit more long term. But what are you doing to tap into that? In the sense, what are you doing in terms of the expansions into India, the kind of properties that you're looking at building up here?
So I think when we look at an economy like India, and to your point, India had in the past relied on foreign inbound, outbound travel into the key cities. Now that you've got the rise of the domestic consumer, it's very much like China was perhaps 10, 15 years ago, where as the domestic traveller becomes the primary traveller to drive travel and tourism, and in the case of India, it's a mammoth 700 million domestic trips, then hotel companies such as ours are building out their pyramid of brands, which means at the top you've got Waldorf Astoria, which is our definition of uber luxury and the very pinnacle of what we do, like the Waldorf Astoria in Jaipur. Then in the large format hotels, of course, you've got the iconic Hilton, where we just announced our 11th Hilton signing by our new Hilton coming in Lucknow. And then in the mid-scale or the upper upscale, we've got the Doubletree brand, of which we've just opened our 11th with another 8 in the pipeline. So what we're trying to do is build out that pyramid to make sure that we've got brands in the locations that our consumers want us to be. And then, of course, as that consumer continues to rise, we will enter with our focus service brands in this market to make sure that we have a brand on every product shelf where our customers want us to be.
Okay, and hopefully we get to experience all of those brands as well. But Zubin, let me get into the conversation and ask, is it actually translating into the numbers as well in terms of, let's say, the occupancy that we have seen over the last 12 to 18 months and the kind of increase in the room tariffs that we have seen? Do you see that sustaining over the next, let's say, 12 to 24 months?
Yes, absolutely. Over the last, especially pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, you can look at the numbers. There have been high double-digit increases, in the 20s in several markets, some markets even beyond that. So clearly, it's been a case where new supply, i.e. hotels that have opened, have been readily absorbed into this market. And across India, you would see a great degree of absorption coming from new hotels coming in new markets. What it means is the domestic demand in the country keeps on increasing. India is nearly, an industry estimates would give you anywhere between 80 to 85% domestically driven market. So we see that trend to continue, yes, and I think it will also lead to the emergence of a lot many more hospitality markets.
Oh, yeah, totally. But, there's this new wave of the form of travel as well, right? People are looking for more experiential travel. There's a lot of spiritual, travel coming up in India. What are you doing about tapping that? Either of you can take that.
Sure. So, we have a strategy around religious tourism. And we are very actively looking at hotels in markets like Ayodhya, in markets like Haridwar, in markets like we have a hotel in Varanasi. Tirupati, these are the markets where the religious tourism will continue to grow, and these have been markets which have been existed for a long time. So beyond the these markets, we want to grow, triple our estate into 75 hotels over the next couple of years. And that would mean beyond the religious markets, we want to go into the state capitals, the tier 2 markets, the tier 3 markets, the resorts. So, that's the opportunity here.
Yeah, tripling your base, and that itself tells you the kind of commitment you have to India and the growth possibility that you see here. But, this is a conversation I've been having on and off. India is one of the top 5, I think, in the hospitality globally. What are the chances that in the next 5 years we are likely to be in top 3, if not top 2?
Well, if you think of the macro conditions of the India economy, one of the world's youngest populations, volume of population, 1.4 million, and the infrastructure build, there is every chance, if not a foregone conclusion, that India follows the Americas and the superhighways that were built in the 50s, which saw really the boom in domestic tourism that saw America become the world's largest lodging population, or the world's largest lodging market. Yeah. Then the same thing happened in China over the last 20 years. You know it as the Belt and Road, which is code for infrastructure build. Fast rail's happening in India. Highways, India lays 7 kilometers of highway each and every day. And if we look at regional airports and travel infrastructure, there's over 1,000 planes on back order here in India. So if you're forecasting travel and tourism, or you're an economist, you would look at India and say, in the fullness of time, there is a way that India doesn't become not only the 3rd largest lodging market in the world, it therefore has to become the world's 3rd largest outbound travel market. China is at 125 million outbound trips. You can imagine, as the India traveler continues to redefine the hospitality space, how India outbound is going to be a factor for all players in all markets of the world in the years and decades to come.
That's exactly the point. You're not alone in this. Everybody else is also seeing this opportunity, right? What are you doing differently? And do you think there could be a chance, not immediately, but the kind of headlines we are reading with respect to the room additions and the acquisitions that are happening in the sector, greenfield, brownfield, etc., there could be a case that supply, is overrunning the demand? Do you see that happening 3 to 5 years down the lane?
I think India has had a history of supply and demand characteristics, right? If you look at the boom-bust cycle of the industry, I think where it has been de-risked, if that boom-bust cycle was to do with outsourcing versus insourcing, if you think of the demands for India in the outsourcing boom, that's because many people in the Indian economy was fueled by people using their back office here. What's different about India this time is not only the rising India consumer, that of course is never leaving India, India is home. We've also got the insourcing phenomenon. So if we're here in Bangalore, if you were to drive to our Hilton in Manyata and go around the business park, you wouldn't see the big outsourcing companies. You would see insourcing. Every major American brand or every major global brand seems to have a presence in Bangalore. Insourcing means it's their team members, it's their capital, it's their asset. This is real money and real capital to be depreciated over years, and in some cases those bills decades to come, which means people are committed to India for the long term. So although, as always, sometimes hotels are ahead of the infrastructure, assuming the infrastructure comes, and no reasons to believe that it wouldn't, there's already enough committed capital, committed business growth in India that India is well deserving of the sort of long sunrise that it's due to get in the travel and tourism sector.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. Finally, those green shoots are emerging into actual, flowers and plants as well, blossoming, if I can put it that. But Zubin, we talked about domestic leisure. It's been doing very well. No two ways about it. But what about business and international tourism? Because it also forms important facets. Yes, a small volume nonetheless, but important lever for growth. Would you say it's coming back in a meaningful way?
Yes, I would think so. Well, I think if you were to still compare it to where it should be, I think there is still more opportunity to grow. But with the economy surging and with the markets really being very strong and infrastructural developments happening and businesses, and the nature of the international economy is that it's interlocked. So we are bound to see more inbound travel coming in. So Bangalore, for example, is a scale market for us. We have 6 hotels here, all doing extremely well. We expect Delhi, Mumbai, all tier 1 markets, to be witnessing strong inbound, and as a consequence, that inbound, both in terms of corporate as well as leisure, I think there's going to be growth all across.
So what's the occupancy level, if I can ask you right now?
Across India?
Yeah.
Well, the first quarter has been extremely strong across the industry, and
and it's not a very seasonally strong quarter, is it? Because Q4 calendar will be the strongest.
Year on year, India crossed pre-pandemic levels last in 2023. We were well ahead of pre-pandemic occupancy numbers. If you go back to, I would say, 20 years, the year 2000, pan-India occupancy was about 67%, right? Now, at that point in time, India, as a hospitality market, had about 60,000 rooms, right? Now, fast forward to 20 years down the road, 2023, the market today has about 200,000 rooms. The occupancy for the Indian market still remains at 68%. So that speaks to the strength of this market. That speaks to the opportunity that Hilton has to grow in this market. That speaks to our intent to grow into the 75 markets and triple our estate. And we are extremely excited. Actually, we signed our Conrad in Jaipur. Then we've just very recently signed a Hilton in Lucknow, and there are some other very exciting announcements that are just around the corner from our stable.
Waiting for those announcements, but I'm happy because my hometown is Jaipur, and when I hear these announcements, Conrad and Astoria coming to Jaipur, that really gives me a delight. But Alan, you also the APAC region as a whole, right? What are the other big trends in the other regions? Because the likes of Vietnam, etc., are also picking up. Which are the other regions that you think could be perhaps big competitors to India?
I'm not sure that they would ever be big competitors, but there is
not in terms of scale, but let's say in terms of
In terms of pace, I think that the Asian phenomenon, if you will, or the Asia Pacific phenomenon, is true of all large population bases that are growing at stronger GDPs than the average. So if you look at Asia Pacific as a whole, it's 54% of the world's population. And of course, in the lodging business, we talk about China and we talk about India a lot, but the mega economies of Thailand, of Vietnam, of Indonesia, all of that have populations over 100 million people, all of which have GDP growth of sort of, in most cases 2, in some cases 3 times that of a stabilized economy. What we're seeing is a virtuous cycle of a pan-Asian traveler, and that is, Thais being a meaningful amount of inbound into Japan, Indonesians into Singapore, Indians into everywhere. So as opposed to being competitors, what it's creating is a virtuous cycle of a short or medium haul pan-Asia traveler that's underpinning what was already strong inbound demand. So what does that mean for our business in India? As inbound continues to grow, which again will be in line with infrastructure and particularly in line with airline capacity and ease of travel, not only will we see more of the traditional long-haul markets from the US and Europe that we've seen, we'll continue to see more pan-Asian customers, more Thais, more Indonesians discovering what this incredible market has to offer.
Okay, on that positive note, I'll let you go, gentlemen. Thanks so much for making time and speaking with ET Now.
Thank you.
Thanks. It's a pleasure.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.